It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantatrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning Tatooine indeed, on the day that the first news network in 20 years launches in the UK, the longest running Tatooine news service, your weekly Star Wars recap. Good morning Tatooine is back once again. So what we got to look forward to this week? Let's jump straight in and find out. We're going to talk about Temuera Morrison and everything Book of Boba Fett that he's been commenting on. Talking Book of Boba Fett, we believe principal photography on season 1 is complete. Coming up, we've got Ewan McGregor talking the Mandalorian with Pedro Pascal. That's quite a combination right there. Taika Waititi on whether his Star Wars film is next up. Hasbro Pulse had a huge event. Loads of reveals there. We'll be diving into all of them. And Emilia Clarke was talking Qi'ra, which was nice to see as there was a reappearance of the character this past week. And then we'll head over to Jabba's court for the big discussion of the week, which is obviously the Bad Batch Episode 7 Battle Scars. Obviously, we want you to subscribe, ring that bell if you're on YouTube. If you're over on Facebook, like, share, subscribe, follow us. We need your comments, whether that's in the YouTube chat or Facebook. We'll try and include as much of it in the show and talk with you. And we need someone else to talk with as well. So this week, who's my guest? Mr. Mark Newbold from Fantatrax. Welcome, Mark. How are you?
I'm fine, mate. How are you?
I'm really good. What have you been up to since we last spoke? It's been a couple of weeks, at least.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks.
And
I got a haircut. That's the main thing. I got a haircut, so I can actually breathe now. Even though it's not hot. It's hot here, but not as hot as it is with you. I can literally see the heat haze behind you, Brian.
The heat haze behind me. Tatooine is burning and hot as always at the moment. But yeah, you've had episodes of Making Tracks. What's been happening on Making Tracks over in Fantatrax Radio of late?
Yeah, we've been rocking them out coming out on a Tuesday. We're recording the Sunday and get it out on a Tuesday, so it's nice and busy there. We've got 2 episodes this week. We haven't announced the second one yet. It's a bit of a special one. So, hello, Mr. Mulcaster. So we've got one out on Tuesday, one out hopefully Thursday or Friday. Not quite sure yet, but that's a bit of a special one. And yeah, just rolling towards the 100th studio episode at the moment. So talking all the latest news and nonsense as we do. So it's all good fun.
And obviously everyone can find Making Tracks on Fantatrax Radio. If you go to your podcast of choice and just search for that, you'll find it top of the list, I'm sure. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to. So I reckon we should just jump straight into the news this week. And
yes.
The big topic to kick off, Temuera Morrison has been talking Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett that comes out or launches at Christmas time. Temuera, the headline says it all. We're going to see his past and where he's been. What do you take from Temuera's comments, and is it going to align with what you want to see in the series?
I think so. I think with Book of Boba Fett, I mean, they've been sort of lining it up as being essentially Mandalorian season 2.5, which is a cute way of phrasing it. But I think if you didn't get some sort of delve into Fett's past, certainly post Return of the Jedi. I mean, he says post Empire. My gut tells me he probably meant post Jedi. But that being said, we've got the War of the Bounty Hunters going on at the moment, and how exciting would it be to see some live action depictions of what we're getting in the comics, or something that will complement it? I hope it doesn't contradict it if they do that, but complements it would be fascinating. Yeah, I really want to see, exactly like Ross says, I want to see who survived the Sarlacc pit. I want to see, was he in there for a long time? Did he get out relatively quickly? You know, the inferences that you're in there for the long haul. I mean, obviously you die, but it takes a while to digest, and you know the acid burns and such. There's the picture. So you'd like to think that we'll see some detail of that, and just what he's been doing for the last sort of half a decade, and why he's taken so long to do what he's done. You know, some people said, well, why was he on Tatooine? Why didn't he just go down to Mos Pelgo and get his armor back? You know, he could have done that. He's Fett. You've seen him in action. There's a reason why he's waited. I'd like to know what that reason is as well. So I think we'll get a lot of that. Very much. He seems stoked for it. He didn't want to give too much away, but I think he probably gave a little bit more with that sentence about seeing his past than he probably realised. But hey ho, loose lips and all that.
And talking of loose lips, over on social media, on Twitter, we've got the news that appears, certainly at least for one character, if not the whole lot of them, that season 1 has wrapped.
Yeah, that certainly looks to be the case, doesn't it? Certainly principal photography, I would say. You know, there might be some second unit stuff and bits and bobs that they always seem to, you know, throw Peter Jackson style, film it on the night of the Oscars and throw it in at the end. But it looks like Ming-Na Wen has done her gift to the crew: latex gloves and Star Wars shorts. I mean, there's a title for a film right there, isn't there? So don't quite know what that entails.
Some kind of film.
Yeah, but yeah, it feels like it's got to be, isn't it? I mean, we're in June now. It launches in December, so we can't be too far away. I don't know, Bri. Do you know? Have they said how many episodes we're getting for Book of Boba Fett?
Never quite confirmed it. When it was announced, they didn't even really announce it as a series, I don't believe. I think they kind of announced it as a special event, which you didn't know whether that was going to be like a one-off movie type thing or straight to Disney Plus or what. So it's definitely going to be a series of some description. How many episodes it runs for, I don't know, but I think it's going to be somewhere between the 6 and 8 episodes would seem sensible, kind of guess.
Yeah, that makes all the sense. And like I say, she's clearly stoked. I mean, you know, turns up in Mandalorian. Now she's co-starring in Book of Boba Fett. She's been in The Bad Batch. What an entry for a character. I can't think of a new character that's come in and made an impact across the timeline and all different types of shows in quite that way. They've got a good one there.
Carol there mentioned that Hasbro need to do figures to coincide. Makes sense, Christmas time, to get those figures out. And Fennec Shah, Boba Fett, both very possible. Might be difficult for him to do other characters from the series, but certainly those two could be out.
You'd like to think, I mean, even if they just sort of tie it in, I think Matt said it before when we've had a conversation, you know, that teaser trailer, or essentially the teaser trailer, comes out at the end of season 2 of Mando, which was a fantastic treat. You'd kind of like to think that unless that was a real last minute addition, which I don't think it was, because, you know, we're seeing Bad Batch production pictures from like 2 years ago plus. So we know these things are long gestating. They've got to be. That you'd think, well, maybe Hasbro are thinking, well, maybe we'll get those 2 figures out for Christmas. You know, what a push that would be for those figures and for the show as well, because it gets interesting in different arenas. Yeah.
And you mentioned the comic book series War of the Bounty Hunters that's going on just now, and whether some characters from that could cross over into live action and so on. Ross there's making the comment that he expects Boskin Denker to show up. Who, if anybody, would you like to see appear in the series?
Both of those guys, good call from Ross. Certainly, I mean, a live action boss done now. You know how well they did RG-11, which was essentially RG-88. So, you know, you kind of think that sort of character. Zuckuss and 4-LOM. I'm not saying 4-LOM. To hell with that. It's 4-LOM. Zuckuss and 4-LOM. I'll accept switching them around after all these years, but I'm not saying it different. 2 stuck in my ways. So I'd like to see those guys. Providing they get through War of the Bounty Hunters. I mean, if anybody hasn't read it, I won't say any more, but you know, they're having a bit of a bumpy ride at the moment, so providing they can get through that. But yeah, any of those classic characters, and I'll just throw it out there, I'd love to see in some form or fashion, if they can do it, Cad Bane come back, and a live action Valance would be just mwah.
I think those of you that have seen some of the pictures on Variety and the BBC and Daily Mail and so on from the Indiana Jones sets, and you see Harrison Ford with more spots on his clothes and face than Spotty from Super Ted. They're obviously looking at de-aging him. There's rumours and talks that being kind of like a time travel kind of thing, or flashbacks at the very least. I'd quite like to see that in Book of Boba Fett. I would quite like to see stories from throughout Fett's history, and so I'm going to throw the character I'd like to see in the series of being Jabba the Hutt.
Oh, totally. And please, if they do it, and I think you're right, if they do it, please make it a puppet. Brian Connolly style, make it a puppet. I don't want to see a CGI Jabba the Hutt. I want to see it the proper, as they did it originally, honour that work and detail, and do it old school, because that would be, you're right, that would be amazing.
Right. Talking to people discussing doing things old school, Ewan McGregor discussing The Mandalorian with Pedro Pascal. By chance, they mentioned puppets. And they mentioned CGI Yoda versus puppet Yoda. And when Ewan was asking whether Grogu was real on set or not. So, it's still a thing for actors as well. They like to see something physical to interact with. Although I would suggest when Ewan says that the puppet Yoda was better than the CGI Yoda, I kind of disagree, because I thought the puppet Yoda was a failure in the prequels, but that was a one-off perhaps.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, totally. We kind of forget, because we're so steeped in this stuff. Thank you, Mark. Exactly. We're so steeped in this stuff that we kind of assume just because they're in it that they would think of it in the same way that we do. It's not 9 to 5, but you know what I mean. It's a working regular. It's a profession to them, so they're not there to think about these things. But with the puppet Yoda, I get that he would feel more secure as an actor acting opposite something. Okay, Frank Oz has got his hand up it, but nevertheless, Grogu's an animatronic. It's a slightly different thing. I can't imagine that sequence in Attack of the Clones being done. Well, it couldn't be done, so they had to do it CG in Attack of the Clones. And when I was saying to Mark earlier, when Comic-Con 2002, they did that Spider-Man Attack of the Clones mashup trailer, and the roof came off the place when they realised that Yoda had got the saber out, and that whole sequence. So people kind of forget now how well received that was back in the day. It's kind of looked through what's the opposite of rose-tinted glasses. I probably can't say in a family-friendly show, but you know what I mean. It's just it's not looked at in the same way now, because sci-fi CG rather has moved on so much. So, but yeah, to think of Pedro Pascal having Grogu to act opposite, who knows what McGregor's going to be acting opposite? We're going to find out fairly soon.
And I loved the interaction between Pedro and Ewan. Great video. Haven't seen it? Check out the show notes for this show. The link's there, and go through to Fantha Tracks and you can watch it. And it's clear that they've been discussing The Mandalorian on set of Kenobi, which I thought was great. Ewan, obviously a fan of the show. As he mentioned, a lot of the cast, not the cast, but the crew there, possibly some cast, don't know. Spoilers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, who knows?
It was a topic of conversation. I love the fact that they kind of got into the whole fact of blue screen, green screen, and this new technology that ILM's bringing out where, it's kind of a hybrid of the both. It is still CGI, but it's CGI live in effect. So you're not acting up against a green screen. You're literally acting up against the CGI.
And you think maybe actors are going to embrace this kind of thing before, because Ewan was so... and Mr. Mulcaster said it when we were talking earlier, is quite right. It's refreshing that he's honest about how hard he found it to make the prequels. He's not bashing them. He's just saying they were hard work. And now he comes into this new show, which he is completely the lead of, and technology's moved on over the last, near as damn it 20 years since he last played Obi-Wan. And so now it's a refreshing change. He feels more in the room, if that makes sense. I can see other actors. Harrison Ford, he's not plastered in dots like some of the actors are when they do CG stuff. It's just quite subtle. He might have acne. I don't know. He might have symmetrical acne. 78-year-olds sometimes get it. But, it can't be... It's not inhibiting him to perform as Indiana Jones, clearly. And obviously is open to them doing the Samuel L. Jackson in Captain Marvel thing of de-aging and such. And the technology is only ever going to get better. So I think actors are probably more open to this kind of thing now.
I think there's pretty much a balance to be had in all these technologies. They all have their place in their moment, and a combination of them all tends to work. And I kind of find it interesting that everybody seems to be in love with the volume, and it really is, at the end of the day, the hybrid technology linking real sets to CGI. You know, it falls somewhere in the middle, although technically you would class it as more advanced. So, interesting stuff. Whether it'll be involved in the next Star Wars film, who knows? One man could probably tell us. And he's been asked whether Star Wars is going to be his next film, and he kind of hinted that it may be. He's maybe ready to push the button and get working on that. Not going to be the next one in cinema. Obviously, that's going to be Rogue Squadron. But he's looking to start work on it. I don't know how far he's progressed in terms of story development or so on, but he seems to excited to be getting involved.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's like I say, he's one of the busiest. I mean, there's a lot of busy guys in Hollywood now, and producers, directors, and such, and he's got to be up there with amongst the busiest. Excuse me, but just the good point Mark makes here. He's like the 21st. Yeah, you imagine Superman being made with stagecraft now, it'd be amazing. But yeah, Taika, he's got so many things on the go, and he does sort of say maybe Star Wars will be my next thing. But again, like you say, Rogue Squadron is 2023. Does Taika's film then come in 25 and another film come in 27? Or is that the next trilogy? It kind of can't be if Rogue Squadron is the first part of it, or maybe it is. We don't really know. Are they going to drop a film in the even numbered years, like a Star Wars story type scenario? Is this film going to spin off into a Disney Plus series? Because Rogue Squadron rather feels like it probably will. It's got that kind of setup. Will Taika's be the same? Lots of questions to ask about it, and we really don't know much apart from that sort of Ben-Hur looking logo, which tells me we're probably going as far back as we've ever gone into the timeline with his film.
Yeah, I'm confident it's going to be some kind of medieval. I'm not going to say High Republic because I think there's a risk of that being oversaturated, but certainly looks like it's going to go back in time. Mark Mulcaster there, good friend from Making Tracks, asking an interesting question there. Could we handle two ongoing trilogies at the same time?
I think we could. I mean, Marvel do it. You know, you've got an Ant-Man trilogy coming up. You've just got a fourth Thor film coming up. You've got a second Doctor Strange. They handle ongoing trilogies, if you think about it, all the time. So I think it's quite feasible and quite logical. I don't see why not. It's a big galaxy, and if they're going to take the plunge and do regular products along with the Disney Plus stuff, it just feels like, and we do go into this on Making Tracks, it just feels like they're teeing up future television projects. And as you say, you know, the Book of Boba Fett's described as a special event. We know it's multiple episodes, but again, you know, I think they could get to the point where they go, this is a TV movie, like totally different, but like Karen Courage was always meant for television. I know we got it at the cinema in Europe, but you know, that kind of event, and on a streamer, you know, the options are endless.
My answer to it is, let's look at what Lucasfilm are working on just now. Indiana Jones 5, Willow for TV, Andor for TV, Kenobi for TV, Ahsoka, Book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian Season 3, what else?
Bad Batch Season 2.
Yeah.
Lando, Star Wars Visions, Droid
Visions.
Tales.
Yeah. All sorts going on. So,
Acolyte.
Yeah. Is it Blood and Bone? Is that the book that Lucasfilm purchased as well?
Yeah, they bought the rights to the book, didn't they? Yeah. So that's a Lucasfilm project.
As a production, they're more than capable of handling multiple productions. Whether as a fandom, we're more than capable of coping with more than one film a year. I don't know. There was kind of like a weird reaction to Solo, and we'll speak about Solo in a little minute. But you know, we seem to be, as franchise fans, weirdly not wanting too much content thrown at us. But in the same hand, we do want the content thrown at us. So there is a balance to be found.
There is, and Andy Fernside just said, "Yay, more Star Wars," and he's right. You know, as it comes to us, we're happy to get it. But then by the same token, I think sometimes we're so used to a Star Wars film having that 3-year gap. Still, I mean, there's a lot of kids who've never known that, but older fans do. And you kind of get used to, and it's the wrong word, but I'll say it's kind of the exploitation in the sense of they'll make a figure of everything that walks past the screen in 3 frames, Constable Zuvio, and they'll just do it as much as they can. They'll spin off every character in the cantina or get a little story, and we don't get that now. Ross there again mentioned Solo. You think that's Sabak scene, all the aliens and that Sabak scene. 20 years ago, you'd know the names. We know Therm Scissorhands. We know Argus, Six Eyes. We know a couple of them, but generally, you don't know the whole crew. They'd all have stories. They'd be in comics. They'd be exploited in the best sense, and we don't get that now. So I do think it's a shame. There's some really good stories that could be being passed by because we're moving on to the next thing, the next thing.
The Adventures of Kitster and Wald. Talking of figures of everything, Hasbro had one of their Pulse events.
Yes.
Got loads of stuff. Massive article over on Fantasy Tracks. Do take the link and the show notes to it and check out the images for all this stuff. Black Series 6-inch Princess Leia. We've got Obi-Wan as well. And Darth Raven, who will sell incredibly well, undoubtedly.
Yes.
What else did we get? 501st Legion Clone Trooper.
Which always sells well.
Yep. And then we're really into Rogue One figures, which obviously is there to complement Andor. I would suggest. So you've got Galen Erso, you've got Merrick, Bodhi Rook. I'm amazed a lot of these figures weren't out before, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Galen Erso,
yeah.
Captain Cassian Andor. I like how he got his title this time. It's often missed out.
Yeah.
And K2SO, droids, no time for that. Chirrut and Baze, obviously, can't have one without the other.
No.
And some of the Mandalorian figures as well, coming through into the 3 3/4 vintage Mithril. Bo-Katan, which was great to see. It's a really nice looking figure as well.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah. The guy whose name I get wrong, so Mark, you can say it.
Quill.
I call him Cool.
I know you do.
The generic Rebel soldiers, you need these in multiple numbers.
You do. Yeah.
And there's always Hasbro always have this weird stuff as well, which I've never understood. If I'm a kid and I want a lightsaber, I want someone's lightsaber. I don't want a lightsaber with a Mando head on it, or a Grogu one for that matter either. I just find that weird.
No.
It's like that wasn't who I was as a kid. I wanted Vader's lightsaber.
It looks like it should be filled with shampoo, doesn't it?
It does. It's that kind of thing. But it's Hasbro. They've got to get some things wrong. And then into the Mission Fleet stuff, which I haven't seen in person ever, anywhere. I don't know if you've encountered them. I don't know what you kind of think of the quality of the stuff. But,
we were talking about this earlier. The packaging is really nice. I've got a few bits, not a lot, but just a few bits. And it tends to be, if I'm wandering around Tesco looking for a box of tea bags and usually end up spending 30 quid on a load of shopping I don't need, quite often one of these little things will drop in there completely by accident. I can't not buy it when I get to the till. So, but I think the packaging is just so nice. They're very cool. I certainly want to get that Razor Crest. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, and like kind of weird and wonderful kind of stuff. I kind of like the droid there. I'm saying that.
Never heard you say that before.
The droid. It's terrible.
What's going on?
I know, but it looks kind of cool. It kind of works for me. And again, the kind of nice little action vehicles, I guess, is the best way to describe them. Out of everything that Hasbro had on show, and there was lots, anything that jumped out at you, something that you're going to be picking up?
Well, it's Rogue One's 5th anniversary this year, 5th anniversary, I should say. So I've already ordered the General Merrick figure, the pilot figure. And when they release the X-Wing that's got the figure with it, I'll be all over that as well, the 3 3/4 X-Wing. And I've also ordered Bo-Katan 3 3/4. I thought that was just a really nice looking figure. So, yeah, but I'm pretty sure there'll be other bits. I know a few people who've ordered the whole Rogue One wave because it just looks so nice. And they've done a good job of releasing them all together as well. It makes all the sense. I think Hasbro's having a really strong year this year. I know some collectors disagree. There's a good amount of repacks. There's the gaming greats, which is kind of bits of this and bits of that, which is business, but they're so well presented and packaged, and there's a regular stream of stuff coming. I think they're doing a really good job.
Yeah. And we mentioned Solo earlier in the show, and Emilia Clarke was talking Qi'ra this week about how much it was an honour and a privilege to be part of that universe when she was questioned about Qi'ra returning. So spoilers if you haven't picked up the comics, but War of the Bounty Hunters, she makes a return. And Emilia was asked about that, which is kind of unusual because, comic news doesn't tend to hit the mainstream and get back to the actors as much as you would kind of hope and want. So it was nice to see her comment on it.
Yeah, the acknowledgement was the thing that I liked. I mean, obviously being in a massive franchise like Star Wars and knowing that her character survives the end of the film, so there's always the potential to do more. She's just got involved. I mean, she did the Terminator franchise, obviously Game of Thrones. She's touched on Star Wars. She's going into Secret Invasion for Marvel. So, she's got a lot of stuff going on. And you kind of think with an actress of her notoriety, let's say, everybody knows who she is. If they don't get her into Star Wars soon, my gut tells me she'll end up on another big, long-running show or series that she can't really get out of to do stuff like, a Qi'ra spin-off. So for her to acknowledge the comic and see the character come back was, I thought, very sensible. I'd love to see her back in the role. I want to see more of Solo on the small screen now. I don't know if I want to see a Solo 2 as a film. I want to see Solo as a series.
I've got a gut feeling she's going to appear in Kenobi.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. So it's kind of the right era, isn't it? It would fit. Yeah.
And she's kind of like the linchpin that could separate Maul and Obi-Wan for the duration of a series and then let them clash at some point. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, because, there's the whole enmity there. We've seen Rebels. We know where that ends and how it ends and so on. But, yeah, you've got to construct storylines to give reason why they don't clash earlier. To lethal effect, which they don't until that point in Rebels. So yeah, I think bringing Crimson Dawn back into the storyline is a good move. I like the way the Hutts were aware of it and kind of nervous without being overtly nervous, but they were very aware of what it was all about, and the reveal of her character was just smartly done. I'm really enjoying War of the Bounty Hunters, and I'm glad that she mentioned it the way she did.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just covered this week's news. So we're going to head over to Jabba's court for this week's big discussion. And this week, episode 7 of the Bad Batch Battle Scars. Mark, impressions of the overall episode?
I really enjoyed it. It was, as it has been with a lot of Bad Batch episodes, I think as a story, it's back of a fag packet. It's quite linear. It's not plot crazy heavy. They're really taking good care to build these characters up so the audience gives a damn when the poodoo really hits the fan. A later point in the season or later seasons, they've said it's a multiple season show, so it should be running for a good while. But I really enjoyed it. It's developing nicely. The characters are gelling. They're getting around the galaxy, which I'm pleased about. You're seeing lots of different places. In this one, you see one of the junk world from Jedi Fallen Order, which was an interesting touch. So, they're really moving about.
Is it moving at a big enough pace for you?
Yeah, it is, because one of the things that happened last week was the final moment of the episode. Trace and Rafa Martez contacted a mysterious hologram. He didn't know who it was. So we had a week of going, is it Bib Fortuna? Is it Princess Leia? Is it Bail Organa? Is it the Emperor? We don't know. Things have happened since we last saw them. They could have got in with the wrong crowd. We just don't know. This episode, you learn that they were speaking to Rex because he says, I was contacted by the Martes sisters and they told me where you'd be. So I like the sense that in other shows, they would have kept that plot line dragging on for a long time, but they don't. They tie that one up really quickly. Similarly with the inhibitor chips, Rex has had this issue. You've watched it build over 4 or 5 episodes. This episode, Rex comes along, Captain Rex, from people know from the Clone Wars and Rebels. Rex and Return of the Jedi, if you want to go down that avenue. Rex turns up and it explains how desperately dangerous it is to have the chip. And by episode's end, the chips are gone. And it feels like other shows would have really dragged that one out, and they don't. There's a confidence of storytelling that we're not going to dwell on this. We're going to get this thing and we're going to move on to the next thing. I like that. It's brisk and it's moving and they're not hanging around. There's a story to tell. They've obviously got a story to tell and they're just plowing through it. It's good.
Andrew making the comment there, he's glad they got that chip finally out. He felt it was kind of starting to drag a little.
Yeah, it could have done. It really could have done, because Wreck is such a. I guess at this point, obviously, Omega's the new character that's really caught people's attention, and in a good way. They're not giving too much away about her too quickly. They are letting her settle into the group, because as a balance of characters, they've lost Crosshair, they've gained Omega. They're all kind of shifting their dynamics within the group to still make the Bad Batch Clone Force 99 work as a unit. So that's interesting to see. But they could have that could have got tiresome with Wrecker constantly, all the, not selling the fact that he's in pain. And this episode, it comes to a head, big time comes to a head. And they deal with it. It was great.
Has the Bad Batch got enough of a counterbalance in terms of an enemy that's really effective in the series?
I think the one possible downside is that because their history is completely military, there were soldiers sent out on missions. They don't have, like I say, they don't have an arch enemy at this point particularly. They don't have a bad guy to rail against. Han Solo, you could, if you wanted to do a solo series, you'd have the White Worm, you'd have Lady Proxima as his big bad if you wanted to, or, somehow Beckett comes back or whatever. You could come up with any mixture of characters that would have a beef with Han Solo, who outside of the Empire wanting the clones quelled or at least very much under their control, who else but them is the issue with the Bad Batch. You kind of feel that within the show they've got to develop their enemy, that maybe Sid turns on them, maybe they fall out with the wrong people. I don't think we know yet who their big bad is, because they've not, there's no reason for them to have one specifically, unless Tarkin takes a real sort of big interest in them, which I feel he's got other fish to fry at this point.
Yeah. Andrew there is also making a point on how great the animation's been, the water splash being so realistic. What's your take on the animation? Because everyone was kind of disappointed with Resistance a little bit in terms of the way that it went. So everyone's kind of seems to be glad that Bad Batch has kind of gone back to the Clone Wars style, which is obviously a more painstaking, expensive process.
Oh, absolutely. And it shows on screen. It really does. I mean, I think if you look at season 7 of the Clone Wars, it feels to me visually as well. It is very much a mix of Clone Wars up to season 6, or really up to season 5, Clone Wars up to season 5, and Rebels. You kind of come with a halfway house between the two, because we know Clone Wars was a ridiculously expensive show to make, but then technology's moved on. Resistance, they clearly decided they wanted a different look and a different style, and let's try this out, because there's no way Resistance cost as much to make as an episode of Bad Batch, let's say. But then tech moves on. Now you've got this show. It is an absolute feast for the eyes. I mean, I love the way they're directing it like it's live action for a start. It's not directed like animation. It's directed like these are actual people in the room. So I love the way that they move the camera around. And there's a lot of, it feels like there's a guy at the other end of the lens that's watching the characters. I think that's really well done. Lots of establishing shots, which Star Wars has always done well. The way they're shooting the space battles, there's a bit of space action in this one. It's just really nicely done, and can't say enough good things about it. And the music complements it really well as well.
Yeah. Your takeaway in the character development, is there a character that's moved in a direction you found surprising? So much focus has been on Omega, But
Yeah.
how are you finding the arcs that the other characters are experiencing?
That's a good question. We did touch on this today, and you'll hear it on Tuesday on Making Tracks. Tech as a character, Goggles as Sid calls him, he's the lightly sketched character. That you feel that there could be more done with him as a character. He is just the exposition. He's Basil Exposition. He's the guy that's giving them all the techie details, the techno babble or trekno babble. So he needs a little bit more depth, I think. Echo the same, although we have seen Echo before him in Clone Wars, so he has had focus on him in the past. So it'd be nice to see a bit more with Echo. Wrecker is growing into this because, Amiga's essentially their sister. She's the kid sister. So it's 3 men and a baby, or 5 men and a baby in this case. It's building nicely in that sense. I think Wrecker, now he's got the chip out, hopefully he doesn't alter, because I think there will be repercussions to the chips coming out. I think there could be some differences and changes coming ahead. So, but I don't know what it'll be, but I can't see them just letting that go as if nothing ever happened. So I would like to see more from Echo, and I'd like to see more from Tech. I think Wrecker's building great. I think Hunter's built brilliantly. And we want to get Crosshair back. And Amiga, let her just grow in her own time. I want to actually see the character physically grow as well. I want to see that actual character get, by season 2, it's a little bit taller. Just want to see the character grow physically as we move through the timeline.
And Carol there's making the comment of whether Vice Admiral Rampart could come more into the story with his vested interest in the clones not being as effective.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because he made it very clear that he wants to enlist people rather than grow them out of a bottle, and the Kaminoans will sort of say, we can have you control these people, but they've got this subscription system they want to bring in. They think it's a better way of training soldiers. Also, I guess from the point of view of you've took over the Republic, which is a galaxy spanning thing to a degree. It's more intense in than out. If you want to really take the galaxy, you get enlisted people from all around the outer rim, the mid rim, and work your way inwards. And you've got a presence everywhere then. If you're enlisting people, you're giving Luke Skywalker the chance to get off this desolate rock to go and live a life in the Imperial Academy, for example. Then, you're going to bring the galaxy to you rather than the other way around. So I think there's a logic to bringing enlisted people in rather than growing them on Kamino. And it's quite possible, Carl makes a great point. Rampart could be, he could be the big bad. He could develop into the guy that wants these fellas gone.
I kind of want Exegol to come into it a little bit, and the cloners from Exegol have some kind of clash with the Caminos, just to kind of link stories together. I don't know quite how you would play it out, but I think that could be an interesting take. Is there kind of some kind of rogue element formed there that is more in favour of the Empire? And that could be kind of a direction it could go in, that could connect dots and add a little bit of history and flair to the series.
Yeah, I mean, Kamino's not a thing by the sequel, the original trilogy, rather. And of course it isn't, because it wasn't created for it. But there's got to be a reason why, you'd think that it's not prevalent. It's not building armies for gang lords on the Outer Rim or whatever, It feels like it's got to be ended at some juncture somehow, or at least taken over. Exegol is a good shout, actually. It feels to give more heft to what we saw in Rise of Skywalker. I think you do kind of need to go back into the timeline, and it's all mega under the radar. We see in the Darth Vader comic, don't we? When he sees the fleet of ships on Exegol and things like that. To give that massive attempt for the Emperor to make his comeback, which failed, of course. To give it more weight and importance. You can do that through comics and books and stuff.
Yeah, and as we look to wrap up the show, we've kind of gone through the Bad Batch there. A couple of shouts out today, because it's the 50th birthday of a good friend of ours, Mr. James Barnes over at Jedi News.
It is. James is 50 today. He's done very well to get there, as did I. I didn't think I'd make it, but
you
there
beat
you go.
Him there. You beat him there, Mark.
Thanks for reminding me. No, definitely want to say big shout out to James and happy birthday, and hope it's a good day and you get all the cake and candles and stuff that you can cope with. So happy birthday, mate.
The other important thing to make sure we cover before we wrap up the show is England versus Scotland this week.
Ooh.
What way is it going to go?
I don't know. We ain't got Gazza anymore, so I mean, if we could bring him back, then maybe we'd have a sniff. I don't know. I mean, we played quite well today in patches. It was a good goal, very good goal. Should have been more than just the one. You guys, when do you play? Monday, your first game, isn't it?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, Czech Republic.
I have to try and watch that at work.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be at this point. You know, both teams are sort of warming up, aren't they? Finding their feet. So we've never won the first match of the Euros. It's the first time we've done it in 9 attempts. So it was a good result today.
All I can say is Baccarat's Yes Sir I Can Boogie is much better than Vindaloo.
No arguments from me.
And I think on that note, we should probably look at wrapping up for today. As we confuse anyone out with of Europe as to what's going on. So,
we
Mark,
do that a lot.
Thank you for joining me. Look forward to hearing Making Tracks on Tuesday. And we'll be back next Sunday for more Good Morning Tatooine.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on FanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Fantha Tracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Fantha Tracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.